Laevatain, Yvonne, and Gilberta are the limited 6 stars being featured in the first version of Arknights Endfield. Most players will only be able to obtain one of them. So I will be going over their kits, some team synergies, and rotations to help you decide. Laevatain is a strong AoE damage dealer. She is very good at clearing out a bunch of enemies quickly and is useful for exploration. However, she does suffer when fighting single-target enemies or bosses. Laevatain requires teammates to apply heat infliction on enemies. These heat inflictions will then be converted into flame stacks. These flame stacks will trigger combustion and activate Laevatain's combo. The energy she gains here will then be used to activate her ultimate and deal massive damage. Laevatain's best team includes Wolfguard, Akakuri, and Ardelia. Applying the first heat infliction stack will trigger Wolfguard's combo, bringing the total heat infliction stacks to 2. Using a final strike will convert these heat inflictions to flame stacks and trigger Ardelia's combo as well. Ardelia's combo applies corrosion, which in turn triggers Laevatain's combo. Now get the last flame stack needed and use Laevatain's skill to activate her combo again. At this point, Laevatain's ultimate will be available, so use that to deal massive damage. This will be Laevatain's premium team. For a more free-to-play friendly team, replace Ardelia with Antal. He can give the focus debuff to enemies. This debuff applies heat susceptibility to the targets. More importantly, when an enemy is affected with physical status or arts infliction, Antal will add another stack on enemies. This will help in quickly getting those flame stacks that Laevatain needs. For this team, start with Antal's skill to apply the focus debuff. Then, use Akakuri's skill to apply the first heat infliction stack. This triggers Wolfguard and Antal's combo to apply 2 more stacks. The last stack needed can be applied by using Akakuri's skill again. With all 4 stacks, use Laevatain's final strike, then skill to use her combo, and finally ultimate. Both these teams have used Laevatain's skill to activate combustion and trigger her combo skill. But combustion can also be triggered when a non-heat infliction is followed by heat infliction. Perlica does pretty well here. Her combo skill can inflict temporary electrification, which increases the art's damage that enemies take. Additionally, using her skill to apply electric infliction will trigger Wolfguard's combo and result in combustion. This activates Laevatain's combo. However, the problem with this team is that Laevatain's flame stacks will be obtained at a much slower rate. Next up is Yvonne. She is one of the best DPS characters in the game and is very good when dealing with bosses. Just like Laevatain, she also deals quite a bit of damage through her ultimate. However, Yvonne only gains ultimate energy when she crits. This makes her the only character to need the crit rate stat currently. Her combo skill is activated when a final strike is performed on an enemy with solidification. To help trigger solidification, I will go with Perlica again. Perlica can first activate her combo skill to apply electrification, and then use her skill to apply electric infliction. Following this up with Yvonne's skill will trigger solidification. Using a final strike will trigger Yvonne's combo, giving her the energy needed for using ultimate. You could also use Zaihi's skill at the beginning for some HP treatment. Replacing Perlica with Alesh gives another decent Yvonne team. Alesh's skill can directly apply solidification by consuming stacks of cryo infliction. From here, you will use a final strike, Yvonne's combo, and ultimate to complete the rotation. Alesh is also a vanguard, so he will be quite helpful for generating SP. Surprisingly, Yvonne has good synergy with another limited 6-star, Gilberta. Gilberta is a support who could heal allies, pull in nearby enemies, and increase the ultimate gain efficiency of the entire team. Applying solidification using Yvonne and Alesh will activate Gilberta's combo, but you should not use it immediately. Instead, you will use a final strike and trigger Yvonne's combo first. Using Gilberta's combo right after will apply lift and trigger shatter, dealing massive damage. If Gilberta's combo is used first, then you won't be able to use Yvonne's combo, as enemies are no longer inflicted with solidification. Gilberta's ultimate also creates a gravity field that slows down enemies and increases the art's damage they take. Avienna, a 5-star Electro DPS, pairs pretty well with Gilberta. She deals huge damage to enemies, so having Gilberta group enemies together would be helpful. So Laevatain is a very good DPS that can deal AoE damage. However, she is less effective when dealing with bosses. She also requires good teammates to generate flame stacks and deal damage. Yvonne is a burst DPS that is good at dealing with bosses, but she only gains energy when she crits. So she will need some considerable field time to activate her ultimate and deal damage. Finally, Gilberta is a support who can heal, crowd control, and buff arts damage. But her healing abilities are not as good as other healers. She will also need teammates who can take advantage of her grouping capabilities. All 3 of them have their strengths and weaknesses. Personally, I would recommend going with either Laevatain or Yvonne. But no matter what, only pull on the limited banner if you have 120 pulls.